Hello, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. So we're back to it. All right. So on Friday, we had looked at the family functions and we said that there were 5 of them. Okay. Thursday and Friday, or Wednesday and Friday. Yeah. I'll get there. So there's 5 functions of what the family should do for its members, especially its more vulnerable members like the young, the old, and people with disability. Okay. So there are 3 beginning with E: economic, educational, and emotional. Then there's a physical function, and then there is a social function. So your written work this week, I want you to do out notes on these, please. Okay, um, as best you can. Try not to copy straight from the book. Put them into your own words. Put them into the way you speak and think, and it'll be more relatable to yourselves when it comes back to revision. Okay. And then, as well as what the family has to provide for as regards functions, if they are unable to do any of them, the government steps in. And as we said on Friday, that we are very lucky in Ireland that our government does intervene to a very high level at times to ensure that all members of society, most of the time, I should say, all members of society are looked after well. Okay, so that is our family. All right, so there's a lot of theory. We spent a couple of weeks on this. Okay, and all our definitions and our kind of words and that we'd come across at the beginning. So that was our terms. So we've done a lot over the last couple of weeks, and then we talked about how no matter where you go in the world, some family in some shape, manner, or form is going to be there. Okay. The family of orientation is what you're born into. Procreation is when you create a new family. And then the affinity is your family of choice. Okay. So it may not necessarily be your blood relations, it may be people outside of that circle. We then went on to modern family structures. So we looked at the nuclear families, just parents and children, the extended family that included aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, etc. And then one parent families where they are usually headed by one parent, and in general, it's a woman. Okay. And then finally, blended families, where it's a person with children starts a relationship with another person with children, perhaps. Okay. So then we moved on. We talked about how family had changed. So we looked here, large families. They were large because there was more hands on deck to do the work then. They became smaller. People married for love rather than land, etc. We talked about the standard of living that has improved and the roles of men and women within the family. So the common theme here is perhaps more education. What's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, the changing role of women in society, divorce. There's been a lot of changes, contraception, the declining role of religion in our society as well. Okay. So that was how the structure had changed over the last maybe 120 years. And then we moved on. We've done a lot when you think about it. We've looked at 3 prongs here. The first one being social changes. Then we looked at economic changes, and then we looked at technological changes affecting our modern family structures. So in society, to do with people, we looked at marriage breakdown, the changing role of women, and then same-sex marriage and adoption, okay, which is relatively new, 2015. In economic changes, this is all to do with money and the economy. So the high cost of living, it makes women work outside the home more. The economy itself, it might be better for women who might be the main wage earner or the better wage earner to work outside the home, okay. And then if people aren't able to get jobs, etc., again, maybe with the pandemic or a recession, the government will provide state benefits for them as well. So the children's allowance would be an example of that. Okay. And then finally, technological changes. So automated household appliances, communications is far better, and our entertainment time. Because we're spending less time doing household work, our entertainment hours have improved as well. And I was listening to a podcast because I'm old and boring when I was out walking one of the days, but it was on rural electrification. It's the RT1 podcast. It's excellent. They do some really good topics, but they were talking about rural electrification. It started in the late 40s, and Ireland wasn't fully electrified until 1967. And they were saying that they were really trying to hit the women, not literally now, but to influence the women back in the 50s to go for electricity. There's an awful lot of people maybe a bit suspicious about electricity at the time. Women didn't work outside the home, and it was the men that made the decisions regarding money of what to buy. So what they wanted everyone to have was maybe 2 plugs and a light switch, I think it was at the beginning. But they would send out, there was these influences of the 50s. They would go around and do demonstrations of new household appliances and try and influence the women in the home that their life would be far easier and less labor intensive because of these appliances. So again, that changed modern family life from that time onwards, because women did spend less time doing cooking on the fire or cleaning stone floors and that, because of this electrification. So that was an interesting one. If you have an hour to burn, or 40 minutes, I think it is, if you're out walking, it might be one to listen to. It was very interesting, actually. Okay, enough boredom from me. So that was our technological changes. And as I said, we hit the family functions then, the 5 of them, the physical, the social, and then the 3s, education, economic, and emotional. Okay, so we've done an awful lot of theory there, and I'm really proud of you for sticking it out with me, etc. So we're moving on to marriage, and as I didn't realize last week, I thought we had 2 weeks left until the midterm. I only found out Friday lunchtime that it was this Friday we're getting our holidays, which is great. It's coming at a good time for us, I think. But we're going to look at marriage this week, okay? And as we know, divorce has come into Ireland, marriage is as important a thing as it was in the past. Okay, so we're going to look at what it is, what is an acceptable marriage custom in Ireland, and then we're going to look around the world, etc. as well. Okay, and I'll do a live class with you tomorrow, so we can move on from there as well. I'm not going to overload you with work this week either. As I said, we've done an awful lot in that last chapter. We're not in school, so we're not going to expect the same amount as we would normally do. Okay, so in this chapter we have a lot of new things to learn, about marriage customs. As I said, customs. In Ireland, we are expected to have one. We're expected to be monogamous, and it's against the law to marry more than one person at a time. It's called bigamy or polygamy, and it's an offence. You can go to jail for it, etc. as well. Okay, so we're going to talk about marriage customs, legal requirements. So marriages are not legal unless you meet certain criteria, rights and responsibilities when you are married, preparing for marriage, how marriage is in Ireland today, things that affect marital stability, and if the marriage does become unstable, we'll look at marriage counselling, family mediation, separation, annulment of marriage, nullity of marriage, and divorce. Okay, so we start off really happy looking at marriage, and then kind of works its way down as far as divorce. So, and finally then we're going to look at the social and economic factors which affect marital breakdown, so things that cause perhaps marital breakdown in Ireland. And then after a marriage is broken down, the effects of it on the person themselves, maybe children in the house, and society as well. Okay, so what is marriage? It is, you underline this, the socially and legally acceptable union between 2 people without distinction as to their sex, with the exclusion of all others. Okay, so it doesn't matter, a man marrying a man, woman marrying a man, woman marrying a woman. That's what it means there, without the distinction as to their sex, but it's to the exclusion of all others. So you're becoming monogamous. I'm just checking my time here now. Okay, so prior to 2015, only couples of the opposite sex could legally marry in Ireland, and this changed in May 2015 when the Irish public voted 62.1% in favour of same-sex marriage in the marriage equality referendum. The requirement for a couple to be of the opposite sex in order to marry is now removed in Ireland under the Marriage Act of 2015. Okay, so you can underline that. The requirement for a couple to be of the opposite sex has been removed, and that's one of your first acts with law. Okay, marriage is either made official by religious ceremony, so you go to the church and get married, all 6 of us at the minute, or a civil ceremony. So somebody who is legally entitled to do so will marry you, but there's no blessing from the church. And either whether you do it religiously or civilly, and when you get married in church, both of these are intertwined. Okay, it's a civil ceremony as well, or if you do it outside of the religion, a civil ceremony, it's legally binding. Okay, so, and the great thing about this Marriage Act of 2015, as you can see here, up until 1993, which is not that long ago, it was illegal to be homosexual in the Republic of Ireland, which is ridiculous. Um, it's like a fiction novel, really, when you think back of some of the things that happened up until recent times. Okay, so what are, in Ireland, marriage customs and cultural variations? So, minimum age, you have to be 18 to get married in Ireland, okay? I wouldn't recommend getting married at 18, perhaps. It's a bit young. I think you need to go off and live your lives and things like that, meet people and get out and see the world, and then but everyone is different, okay? And the age rule is the same, irrespective of whether you're getting married in the church, it's religious, or a civil ceremony. Up to about maybe 5-10 years ago, you could be 16 to get married with your parents' permission. Your parents would write you a letter, okay? Which is, again, mad. I have a 16 and a 17-year-old, as I was saying to you last week, and to think of them even getting married would be nuts, you know? But again, that was the done thing many years ago, as we were talking about. The minimum age restriction is not the same for all countries. For in Sudan, which is in Africa, the legal marriage age, which is horrendous, is 10. And I have a 10-year-old girlie here, Ava. And again, to think she was being married off to an old man in the village, it makes your skin crawl. But again, that is the normal in their country. Okay. So that's what I was talking about. Prior to 2015, 16 and 17-year-olds could get married with a court exemption granting permission. And 387 minors of this age got married at 16 or 17 between 2004 and 2014. Okay, be interesting to see, are they still married, etc. Okay, so that's our minimum age in Ireland. Choice of partners then, all societies place some form of restraint on an individual's choice of marriage partner. These constraints can be based on religion. So in certain parts of the world, you can only marry people of the same religion as you. Up in Northern Ireland, I'm sure to this day, you wouldn't find too many Protestant and Catholic marriages between those two religions because of tensions and historic separation of the two groups of people. Your socioeconomic background. So remember last week or the week before, I was talking about the caste system in India. You do not marry, you do not fraternize or meet anyone outside your caste, or close family relationships. So in Ireland, we are not allowed to marry our cousins. You can get permission, I think, to marry a second cousin. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that. But in Muslim culture, especially Pakistani Muslims, they will marry their first cousins. And a lot of them do, and it leads to, I was watching a documentary on it, I need to get out more, I suppose, but there was one family with 5 children, 2 first cousins had married, and 4 of the children had disabilities, which can happen because your genetics aren't being diluted by having children with other people. And they were saying it was a great thing to marry their first cousin because they knew their in-laws, it was their aunt and uncle, when you think about it. So I think in Ireland you can get permission to marry maybe a second cousin, but not a first cousin, okay, because of the genetics side of things. So in Ireland, individuals are prohibited from marrying based on close family relationships, which include consanguinity, which means blood relationships. So a woman could not marry her child. I don't know if you'd want to, because you are their mother. And affinity, a relationship by marriage. A man cannot marry his child's spouse. So you could marry your son or daughter-in-law if you wanted to. Now, in some cultures, individuals do not choose their partners as marriages are arranged. This used to happen, as we know, in Ireland. For example, in India, parents often find a spouse for their son or daughter who's of the same socioeconomic status in accordance, with the caste system, which we were talking about. So they will share similar values, similar beliefs, and norms as well. Okay, and this caste system in India is determined by birth, as we know. Okay, and it depends on what you do and where you're from, etc. And it's estimated even in 2021, 95% of Indian marriages are arranged as well, which is mad when you think about it. Okay, so we'll finish off with the number of spouses today, if I have enough time. Oh, I don't. I'm going to finish up here now for the second, and we'll continue this on Tuesday. Okay, so as I said, you have your notes making for this week and see how you get on. All right, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.